as a kid saying, yeah, I like the WWE, and being made fun of, like, oh, it's fake, it's whatever. It's like, I'm like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, okay, but how is that fake? I'm watching it, right? But then I get, like, obviously as I grew up and I looked more into it, like, yes, they'll teach you how to take a kick, how to take a punch, but some of that shit you can't fake. Like, you can't fake gravity.
Exactly.
And I think the greatest example is, you probably know when this was a lot better than I do, but when Undertaker throws Mick Foley off the top of a fucking cage and he falls into the commentator, like, you can't fake that.
No.
There's no amount of, like, wire work or, like, what. He had no wires. There was no padding. Like, I don't care what was lying in that commentator booth, because when it broke apart, I saw no foam. I didn't see a mattress pop out. He just broke through that shit. And I just remember, like, looking at that for the first time, like, oh, is he fucking dead? Or, like the stupidity where, like, they would set fuckers on, like, they'd set the ring on fire and set people on, like, what the fuck? Or I saw a video actually today where it was a flashback to, like, 2010, and they've got a buried alive match, and they bury Undertaker alive, and then you just see a hand stick out. It's like, okay, but he had to hold his breath for, like, how long? Like, what?
I know exactly what you mean, man. Trust me, I've heard it. I don't know how long. People always tell me, hey, you know that shit's fake, right?
It's like, well, yeah, they're gonna teach him how to take the punches, how to take a fall or whatever. But I mean, come the fuck on.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, but it never stopped me. And I know exactly what you're talking about. When he threw Mick Foley off of that, I heard he cracked several ribs, he punctured his lung, and there was another spot after that. He goes to choke slam him on top of the Hell in a Cell.
Oh, and he falls through the thing, right?
Was not planned. They did not plan that at all. And after that one right there, I think that's the spot where his tooth goes through his lip. Yeah, Mick Foley, he's one of the craziest people. He's done a lot of spots like that, and I remember he took a spear from Edge at WrestleMania 22, and they went through a table that was on fire. Edge went through it face first, so he said he suffered like second-degree burns from it too. Some of the stuff that they're willing to do just baffles me.
It's like, stupid. It's cool to look at, but it's like, bro.
A few years ago, I can't remember which WrestleMania it was. I think it was WrestleMania 33, if I remember correctly. Undertaker was in a match with Shane McMahon, and Shane McMahon's in his late 40s at this point. He jumped, and the Hell in a Cell has gotten significantly taller since Mankind got through off of it. It's, I'd say, every bit of 20 feet tall now. Maybe slightly, give or take a few feet. Shane McMahon jumps off of it, goes to land on the Undertaker, and just lands on the table.
I saw that. I remember. Yeah.
And that wasn't the last time he did it. He did it after that too.
And you bring up a really interesting point. The dude's in his fucking mid-40s. He's not young.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, as a kid watching that, or watching, like, various things happen, and I'm like, okay, how are these guys not dead? A. And then I remember very clearly, this is like the first talk I got from my mom about drugs. And it wasn't even about, like, marijuana, coke, anything like that, heroin. Was when Eddie Guerrero died. And they figured that they did the autopsy and it was due to steroid usage. He had a cardiac arrest and it literally broke his heart. And so I had to get that talk because of WWE about the dangers of steroid usage. Because, like, my dad, I remember when I was a little kid, my dad was a big gym junkie. And I wasn't, like, I never got old enough to be able to ask him, like, if he did steroids or not. My mom swears up and down he didn't. But I just remember him being a huge guy. Real big guy. Idolized fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, all those dudes, right? And so learning through a medium like the WWE, like, this is what steroids can do to you. I mean, that kind of made it real. Like, oh, these guys like going through some stuff. And then I remember in like, God, I want to say 2007, 2008 is when the big controversies came out about like the backyard videos, where everyone was trying to do it. Kids were getting like barbed wire stuck in their neck, nails in their bodies. Like they were breaking their backs on tables. And like the WWE had to come out and be like, hey, fucking stop, you bunch of idiots.
Yeah. It's funny. WWE, they used to come out with these little DVD packages before they came out with the WWE Network now.
Right.
And they'd always say, don't try this at home.
Yeah.
But and you speak of Eddie Guerrero, that's actually, we named our podcast after one of his signature moves, the Three Amigos. And I remember I wasn't old enough to really grasp the weight of his death, and I didn't even know how he died until years later. And looking back on it, it's crazy because back then a lot of those guys were on steroids. Best example was Chris Benoit. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Oh, that rings a really weird bell.
Chris Benoit, I'm sure he died. It's never been revealed, but I'm pretty sure he did steroids because he was very, very stocky. I think it was a little after Eddie's death. He killed his wife and son and then killed himself. And it was later.
Yes, I remember that.
Mm-hmm. It was later contributed to his problems with CTE. And I feel for a lot of these wrestlers because it's been well documented. Several many wrestlers struggled with drug addiction and addiction to painkillers.
This is the painkillers.
Yeah, Kurt Angle's best example. I think after his initial run with WWE, he left the company. I think around 2010, maybe a little before that. But after that, and it's been revealed years since then, he was taking like 60 Vicodin in a day and drinking like over a bottle of vodka on top of that.
Well, the crazy thing about someone like Kurt Angle is that, dude, a lot of people don't know this, but like Kurt Angle was an Olympic wrestler. Like an actual Olympic wrestler that went to the Olympics. He won a fucking gold medal
with a broken freaking neck.
Yeah, with a broken neck. He's an actual wrestler. And then so to see, and that was like always strange. Like when I started learning about these guys, I was like, and watching WWE, and that's what kind of helped. That's not helped, but like that's kind of like what made me distance from it in my teenage years. And I was like, he could break you in fucking half. Like this is hard to like really. I get that it's a scripted show and it's supposed to be like storylines. Not that I ever followed the storylines as a kid. I can't even grasp like the moves, let alone a story. But like, I would just see these people that would go through and like, okay, so like when I was in like later middle school, almost in high school, I started learning more about like the UFC and fucking seeing Chuck Liddell in WWE. Like, I'm sorry, but Chuck Liddell will line all of you up and just break all of you. Mm-hmm. Same thing like recently with Brock Lesnar. That dude is like 6'something", 250 of straight fucking muscle. Like that, he's just a big muscle. And I just see stuff like I don't. Is Lesnar still in WWE or is he kind of out of it?
Yes and no. After during 2020, his contract was up and he didn't renew it. But everybody believes he's going to come back eventually. That's the only problem with Brock Lesnar. And you're right, he is just a specimen of a human being.
He's a fucking Viking. He's a Viking.
Yeah. He's the tip top in terms of just being in shape. and Mason, he can't stand Brock Lesnar because since he came back in 2012, he's been a part-timer. So he'll only show up during the big events and really only when he needs to and collect his check. I mean, he's been the highest paid guy in WWE for like 5 years now.
Really?
Yeah, he in 2018, I think he earned like $10 million.
More than
The
Cena.
next, yeah, oh yeah, him and John Cena were very close, but Brock Lesnar, and I get it. I mean, credit to Brock Lesnar, he brings in a crowd. He's the money. John Cena, John John Cena, he stopped appearing full time in 2017, I think. But him and Brock Lesnar, they rose around the same time, and so their careers have always been just right there with each other. And Ronda Rousey too. She's probably the newest example of a combat star that transitioned over to WWE.
Is she still there?
Yeah, she's still under contract. It was just announced a few days ago. I'm sure you saw she's pregnant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and nobody knows when she's coming back. Her last appearance was 2 years ago now. So and more recently, I just saw last week Henry Cejudo is training to be in the WWE.